Closing doors, please.
ध्यान देने के लिए धन्यवाद.
Coming to you from GGV Capital, this is Evolving for the Next Billion, where we interview local champions and global giants in tech industry who are shaping the lives of the next billion internet users. My name is Hans Tong. I'm a managing partner at GGV Capital, and I've been working at and investing in startups across the US, China, and other emerging markets for the last 20 years.
My name is Rita Yang. I'm the marketing manager at GGV Capital. On this show, you will hear stories about ambition, ingenuity, and resilience, unfolding every day from Singapore to Sao Paulo, Beijing to Bangalore. We also recommend you to join our listeners community on Slack, WeChat, and WhatsApp, where you can connect with like-minded people and attend our offline events across the world. You can join by visiting nextbn.ggvc.com.
On the show today, we have Ankiti Bose, the founder and CEO of Zelingo, one of the largest fashion and lifestyle marketplaces in Southeast Asia. According to Bloomberg, the latest financing values Zelingo at $970 million. Ankiti is among the youngest female chief executive to lead a multi-million-dollar, pretty much billion-dollar startup in Asia.
Prior to launching Zelingo, Ankiti worked at McKinsey as a management consultant and Sequoia as an investment analyst. She holds a bachelor's degree in mathematics and economics from St. Xavier's College in Mumbai. Welcome to the show, Ankiti.
Thank you.
First of all, help us understand how Zelingo works. Who are your main customers and how do you work with them? What value do you provide for them?
So fashion apparel is 4% of the global GDP. So it's a huge industry. It's almost a $3 trillion industry.
Yep.
And the way the industry works is that we are all wearing clothes in this room. It is very likely that your shirt crossed borders to get to you. So the fabric probably came from China or India. If it's cotton, if it's polyester or viscose, probably China. Then it went over, the trims came from, let's say, India. It went to a factory in Vietnam and it got woven or stitched there. And then it went to your, the brand that you sourced from in Italy. And then maybe you bought it in New York. Mm-hmm. But it's very likely that many of these steps actually took place. So it's a large industry. It's a very fundamentally cross-border industry.
Yes.
Despite that, there is no Foxconn in it, right? Or
right.
There's no, there's nobody setting the standards of manufacturing in this industry.
Right.
And there's also no SAP or Oracle, which is setting across the supply chain. So suddenly what you have is you have one of the largest industries in the world. It's fundamentally cross-border, but it is filled with middlemen and intermediaries and, people who are taking away more value than they're adding across the supply chain. So what you have is a large supply chain wrought with a lot of middlemen. What Zelingo does is we are an end-to-end cloud platform that connects right from the guy that makes the yarn, the fabric guy, the manufacturer, to the brand, enabling them to do commerce with each other better, allowing them a tech platform which also sort of provides analytics and financial services on top of that to efficiently take care of all of their business.
So say if I am a designer or apparel merchant in the Southeast Asia and I wanted to sell my clothes, how can Zelingo help me?
So let's say you're a merchant in Southeast Asia. Let's say you're a merchant anywhere. Your problems are how do I sell more? But more importantly, it's, how do I source better? How do I get financing for that sourcing? How do I make sure that I get the best pricing on that sourcing? How do I get the best cost of logistics for shipping my goods? How do I get the best payment processing costs? Because as a small merchant or even as a medium-sized merchant, maybe you sell 100 products, maybe you sell 1,000 products, maybe you sell 10,000 products. But are you as big as Zara? Are you as big as H&M? There is no way that just by yourself, your economics would be competitive or even it can be compared to a large conglomerate. That's where Zelingo comes in. Zelingo says, hey, little merchant, brand, SME, whoever you are the center of creative thought. You are the one who's deciding what you want to make. Let us take care of everything else. Let us come in and connect you with the guys that will manufacture your product best to the capabilities that you require. Let us finance your working capital needs for it. Let us give you logistics at the rates that large conglomerates would have. Let us give you payment processing options that you as a small brand can never have. And the reason Zilingo is able to provide these at very competitive rates to a small merchant is because we are aggregating this across hundreds of thousands of merchants. So suddenly, each merchant has a very competitive economics, as competitive or at least comparable to the large conglomerates, because the power of unifying them and aggregating them is being brought to them by Zilingo.
So what you're saying, if there's 5 different small merchants who wants to sell and source, and then you can help them achieve that scale effect and negotiate better deals. But what
Yes.
if the styles aren't the same? I mean,
Yes.
isn't that the nature of small brands?
Absolutely. The styles don't have to be the same. The way fashion works is that usually when you're talking about sourcing from factories, there are a few different types of products that are either they're knits or they're wovens. Maybe they're denims, they're polyester, they're cotton, and so on and so forth. What we do is we tie up with over 4,000 factories that are on our platform. Many of them are our cloud factories, similar concept to Cloud Kitchen, where we have leased facilities where we bring in our technology, hardware, and software, and increase the capacity utilization. And then as long as it's within some boundaries of these are knits or these are wovens or these are denims, we can negotiate with the suppliers on behalf of multiple manufacturers. And we sometimes give inventory guarantees, sometimes it's on demand. But essentially, the rates are net significantly better, at least 30 to 40% better than what they would do if they were small brands that were trying to negotiate directly with factories themselves.
So you were investment analyst at Sequoia. You
Yes.
started off in India and then went to Singapore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great job that many people will want, period. Why do this? And how did you come up with the idea to do this?
That is true. I think working at Sequoia Capital and working with venture capital was a dream. It was, I think, the best job that I could have ever asked for.
Also working at GGV, of course.
Yes, I'm sure. Absolutely. And I think had I not started out on my own, that would have been the job that I would have loved to continue to do if they would have me. But when as I was spending a lot of time working for Sequoia and working in Southeast Asia and in India, this was in 2014-ish. So Southeast Asia didn't yet have any
A lot of unicorns. yeah.
unicorns, right? And a lot of there are so many now,
Right.
but they were all babies or
Yeah, babies,
baby
that's right, literally,
companies.
yeah.
Then, but there was this insane potential. And, you could feel that crazy things were about to happen in Southeast Asia. I had seen that happen in India. Of course, in India, we had gone through
More ups and downs.
a little bit of ups and downs, and then, some serious downs and some insane ups.
Yes.
So I was mentally prepared for that, but it seemed like, Southeast Asia was such a great opportunity. The end of 2014, I was on a holiday in Thailand with a few of my friends who were ex-colleagues from McKinsey. And we were at this market called Chatuchak. This was while I was working at Sequoia Capital. So Chatuchak market has over 25,000 merchants. And about 8,000 of them are broadly in the fashion-ish space. So fashion, accessories, bags, and things
Sure.
like that. And people were crazy about it, right? So it's a weekend market. It's not even there every day. People would fly down from Singapore, from Hong Kong, everywhere to just shop in Bangkok and go back.
Right.
And these merchants were really good at what they did, but they had zero sense of how to digitize their business. So while, back then there was Lazada and a few other marketplaces were coming up, these guys didn't have any tools to actually do anything besides list on online B2C marketplaces
Correct.
and sell. And the fundamentals of the economics were such that no matter what you do, unless you made the margins better for this guy, there was no way you could make money in e-commerce.
Right.
Because the margins were already so thin.
Exactly.
So we said, hey, something else is going on, right? So somewhere the margins are getting, squeezed out before the product even gets on the
To the
online
hands.
B2C
Yeah.
marketplaces. So something else is going on, especially in categories like fashion, where people perceive it to be a high margin category. How can you still burn money on B2C e-commerce, even in categories where there are so much margins? So that's when we started looking back and looking more and more upstream and trying to understand where the merchant was sourcing from, why they were not going directly to factories, why their quantities were not, their minimum quantities were so small, factories were not doing it. So then there were agents and distributors, and we said, okay, this whole thing is so old school, tech should fix this. And that sort of led to the inception of everything else that we built in the future.
So you could have had a choice to do this in Singapore or Bangalore.
Yes.
Why did you choose Singapore? Now you have operations in Singapore, Bangalore, and Jakarta. I get
That's
that.
right. Going back to what I said before, fashion is very cross-border.
Yes.
So we knew that we needed a company that would be able to scale pan-Asia, if not globally. Back then, maybe we were thinking pan-Asia.
Right.
Now we're thinking, of course,
Including
very
US.
including the US, where now so many of our customers are.
Yep.
And Singapore made a lot of strategic sense. It's a great country, very supportive regulations and so on and so forth.
In the regional hub.
And exactly, it's a regional hub. And, both from an investment standpoint as well as partnerships, as well as everything else, it made sense to have the parent company headquartered in Singapore and then having entities in countries like Thailand and Indonesia and Bangladesh where sourcing can happen.
Yep.
Having entities in countries like India and Vietnam where the tech could be based.
Yep.
Having an entity in Hong Kong so that, supply gaps from China can be filled. So
Yep.
we thought of all of that.
Yes.
We didn't know exactly how it would pan out, but it made sense that the parent would be in Singapore and then all of these baby companies would serve different purposes.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So you have quite a global customer base with local taste and have a variety of strong local competitors as well.
Yeah.
How do you go about localizing the business and talent while building something that applies to other geographies?
That's a very, very true statement that, people say the phrase Southeast Asia or people say the phrase South Asia, like it means something.
Right.
And I really think
It's
it
a
does.
Western construct.
Yes, it's a Western construct because, within Southeast Asia, if you think about Indonesia and Thailand and Philippines and Singapore, they really don't have so much in common with one another. The language, the culture, the food, the currency, everything is different. They are not trading with one another or even inside their countries in English or in Chinese.
Right.
So they are fundamentally independent cultures and economies.
Yeah.
Again, if you look at South Asia, if you look at India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, maybe language barriers are a little fewer, but they are completely different from one another, like from a government regulation standpoint, everything.
Yeah.
So painting these regions with one brush and pocketing them into one phrase is a very Western construct.
Right.
And what that implies, like you said, is that the product, the business, the trade, the culture and offices is super, super different, right? So from a product standpoint and from a business standpoint, what we make sure is that each large country, each large team is led by a local leader who is sort of a local founder who has completely decentralized decision-making powers to run that country. So we have strong leaders in each of these countries who understand the product and the team and the culture over there. Because, we have 15 nationalities in Zilingo, right? So
For your team.
For our team. And, customers in 8 countries, but we have 15 nationalities. So everybody, is very different from one another. We are a 50% female team, but even within that, there is so much diversity. There are white women, there are Muslim women, there are Indian women, there are all sorts of different ethnicities, religions, cultures. And the best way to make it work is to have these subcultures be independent and then tie them together with common values. So I think it's a very interesting and very challenging thing, but we try to address it by letting everybody's independence remain and let everybody's individuality remain.
How did you assemble those local teams in the first place?
It was fun. It's great fun. I think Indonesia, which is our largest office, the team that started Indonesia, there was sort of like a bridge team, the bridge between India, Singapore, and Indonesia. And then they hired the local, quote unquote, founders of Zilingo Indonesia, who then built up their team and then they hired more people and so on and so forth. So it was a very localized approach to team building. It wasn't that, hey, we have come from, India or the Valley or Singapore, and now these are the rules and we will tell you how to run this. We were like, Indonesia the best. So these are the things, these are the guiding principles, these are the goals and these are the values, but let's make it applicable to Indonesia. And I think that's why it worked. And I've seen many companies where not doing that and not respecting the individuality of a culture has actually led to failure. So we really appreciate that all of these cultures are super different and we need local strong founders in each of these.
Where is that mentality comes from? Because I would imagine for many other founders, they would like to have a sense of control across different regions. Why do you have that?
I think I don't feel a lack of control from this. In fact, if anything, I feel like I think most people at Zlingo, irrespective of which country and which team they work at, have a strong sense of belonging to their workplace. So it's like, they're working 18 hours a day. It's like, it's majority of their life. It's not a part of their life. There's no work-life balance. It's just, it's like,
So it's 996.
Yeah, it is 996 and it's at least 996. And therefore it's a big part of their life.
Right.
So they have to have a strong sense of belonging to where they are. And that gives a lot of sort of sense of unity and loyalty to the common vision and common purpose. And that actually makes me feel like we're much more in control because people are happy and people want to do this. And that comes from respecting their individuality, right? So if this was much more top down in terms of governance, I feel like there would be more discontent because people are so different in different,
Sure.
We have a team in New York and we have a team in Jakarta and
Right.
we have a team in Bangkok and we have a team in Bangalore.
Right.
They have very
Also,
little...
there's a lingo. There's probably not a lot in common.
Exactly. Outside of Zlingo, there's not a lot in common. So you have to let that individuality flourish and give them local leaders they can look up to and relate to. And then sort of tie in together with common goals, KPIs, OKRs, values, rather than sort of force it top down.
Right.
I think it also helps that, our leadership is 50% female. So it's like non-threatening in a way. That's how we're all human brains are biased a little bit like that. So there's some good things about it. There's some bad things that come out of biases. But I think people relate to a diverse, both from a gender and ethnicity standpoint, when you have a diverse leadership, people relate to it more easily. So it's not like there's a foreign construct of rules and KPIs and we have to somehow follow it. It's not like that at all.
How did you recruit local leaders?
I think in most of the countries, the guys who are like the core key, who we call the founders, they were all found by us. Like we cold called them, emailed them, messaged them. They were all like at different companies at like Lazada and so on and so forth.
I see.
And they didn't come through recruiters or, investors or any of that.
Right.
Not that we didn't try those other methods, but I
Right.
think all the guys who finally are in the top team now were all people that either we knew or we just sort of hounded and cold called and sort of found common ground with.
So a number of them come from Lazada, sounds like.
Some of them do. I think,
when other bigger companies were having issues, it's much easier to recruit. Yeah.
We spent a lot of time with, I think of like this, I think this way about hiring senior team, about getting investors on board. I always say, to others that date before you marry. So,
Yes.
so we've spent
Completely
a lot
agree.
of time. Yeah, whoever it is, if you're going to be, related to one another with equity and with your time and with your life, then be sure of it.
Yes.
Spend time trying to getting to know each other and your working styles and so on and so forth. So we've done that with all of these people before we took the plunge.
Yeah.
And it worked out.
So when you look at your business, do you think of in terms of B2B and B2C? How do you think about sort of where you expand to and what value you provide?
Yeah, we're definitely a B2B company in the sense that our purpose is to serve the merchant. And in some cases, the merchant is the yarn guy. In some cases, the merchant is the fabric guy. Sometimes it's the factory. But we are an end-to-end cloud platform that serves use cases around a merchant. So we are a 2B platform. When we say, think of the customer, we're thinking about the merchant. We do have 2C marketplace business in Southeast Asia. It's a very small part of our business. It's an additional distribution channel in markets where our merchants don't have adequate distribution channels
Right.
to distribute fashion in.
Right.
But, for example, our 2C marketplace is not something that we operate in the US
Right.
or in India or any of these places.
Right.
But our merchants do distribute their products in those markets using our software, but on other marketplaces.
Got it. So when you were first building your business, did you come in thinking that you're going to be more B2B focused, or you kind of tried a bit of different things and realized
Yeah.
that this is where the most value is being generated?
I think we tried a bunch of different things. And, I don't like the word pivot. I like to say evolution or
Yeah.
evolve. So as we were spending more and more time with merchants, we realized that the number of problems that you can solve for them and, even make money out of solving those problems, versus, using all of your VC capital to chase the 2C customer and inundate them with discounts, which already so many other people are doing.
Yeah.
We took a sort of hard look at ourselves and we said, you know what, let's do it's a slightly tougher problem, but the 2B problem seems to be the one where there's a lot of value to be created and not a lot of capital is chasing it.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that now I feel like people have woken up to the 2B opportunity.
Yes.
But 2 years ago, it was a little bit of a, why exactly
Why are we
are you
doing that?
it? It's
Right.
not sexy and so on and so forth. But I think we did the right thing. And,
Right.
and I feel like we generate a lot of value for the merchants and our business as well.
Yeah. Well, as you know, successful examples from US and then China were mostly 2C. So
Yes.
it's easy to try to replicate a model in
Yes.
other places. But given especially where India is with the GDP per capita,
Yes.
B2B, it makes so much more sense. And there's so much value to provide. There's so many more merchants.
Yeah.
And the market is so fragmented that we're seeing a pattern emerging.
Yes.
So Hans, I actually wanted to ask you about this particular B2C versus B2B, because in China, the problem, I would say like 20 years ago, is pretty similar. There's like small merchant doing their own thing, mom and pop
That's
shops.
where Alibaba.com got started.
So there is, in fact, a B2B that Alibaba solved.
Right. But it was too early. There's not enough transaction services possible. Not enough people were online. So it was 2B back then, was just more of a ads listing kind of business. These days, you start to see more B2B commerce emerging, but 2C was so strong that many of them can just integrate upwards. India is different. So building B2B now makes perfect sense for India and Southeast Asia.
I see. So Ankiti, growing up in India, you actually moved around quite a bit.
Yeah.
Does that even affect you, how you run your business today?
For sure. So I was born in Bombay. Then I grew up in a very remote part of Northeast India called Tripura, which is very close to Bangladesh. Then I moved to Dehradun, which is in the north of India, again, very small city. I moved back to Bombay. Then my parents were in New Delhi. I continued to study in Bombay. Then once I started working and then, moved from McKinsey, then to Sequoia, and then with Zilingo. The last 5 years, I've stayed in Bombay, Bangalore, Jakarta, Bangkok, and Singapore. And now I'm spending a lot of time in New York. So I think somewhere, even as a child, getting uprooted and going to a new environment and trying to be sort of not just fascinated, but looking at the opportunities in new environments became normal at age, I was 6 months old when it happened to me the first time. And then by age 3, it happened again. And by age 7 again, it had happened. So I think it was normalized as a child.
Yeah.
And I'm somebody who does get bored and saturated quite quickly. So I need to move around a little bit and find new things and new opportunities to chase, which is exciting and which helps me at work, coming back to what you said, Rita, because I'm paranoid that, I was 23 when I started Zilingo, so I get paranoid that there's another 23-year-old who's going to probably figure out how to do this better than us and do it so much better than us. So I'm constantly trying to be that 23-year-old and look at opportunities from different business lens and geographic lenses and so on and so forth.
Sure. I've worked and lived in 9 cities myself in my life.
Yeah.
So I completely get where you're coming from.
This is your first startup, is
Yes.
it? And it has grown 12 times since its funding. It's a pretty impressive track record. Can you share with us, what are some of the key drivers of this growth?
I think the first sort of, inception of the idea came from the fact that businesses in Southeast Asia and Asia in general, like we discussed, can't be painted with one brush. Unlike India or China, the rest of Asia is actually super fragmented. So the first spurt of growth started when we started addressing and treating each market and each product and each business like its own being. Then the second spurt of growth happened when we took a hard look at ourselves and said, let's focus on the 2B opportunity. Let's focus on the merchant instead of, spending money on subsidies to onboard more customers, because everybody's already doing that. And more merchants are selling online, but let's help them sell online better with technology, with data science, with financial services and sourcing. Let's just focus on providing these 4 services to them. And then the next, and I think the biggest, sort of the steepest, the J curve happened in our lives about 2 years ago when we realized that, providing free technology and providing procurement is all great and people want it. Providing data science in terms of what they should source, etc., is great. But what is the main missing link and sort of the enabler to all of this is financial services. So we said, we need to learn how to be a good fintech company, right? If we want to be a good fashion company. And that was because most of these merchants in most of these countries were in some of them could be lemons, but many of them could be great businesses. But there was no credit score, there was no history, there was no tracking of who they were sourcing from and who they were selling to. So let's say a bank wants to fund them. But they can't. So we realized that as the platform that could see who was buying what from whom and then selling it forward to who, even though the guy doesn't know, like a yarn guy doesn't know that his yarn finally became the shirt that you're wearing. But if you bought it from a credible brand, then the yarn guy should be able to get financial services because, he's a good yarn guy. But even he doesn't know if he's a good enough yarn guy. And definitely the banks don't know it. So we said, this is obviously not just the biggest enabler and biggest lubricant of growth. This is also the big moat in our business. So let's focus on this. And then when we did that and we learned how to be a good financial services enabler, that's when the crazy 12x growth happened that you're talking about. And I think the reason all of this has happened is because I always say, mission, vision, etc. keeps on changing. Values can also evolve over time. We should all take ourselves less seriously and look at what's happening in the market and evolve with it. Otherwise, some 23-year-old is going to beat us to it. So let's always have an open mind in terms of what we do. And of course, I receive a lot of flack for it as well, right? People question it all the time and we encourage that dissent. Like, why did you choose this? You said we will do this last year. Why are you changing it now? And the answer is to be competitive and to be a valuable company, we have to change our outlook. And that's okay.
As you grow so fast, who do you try to learn from or look up to? Or how do you find source of inspiration to guide you to make decisions?
I think, obviously, it sounds cliche to name both Alibaba and Amazon, but I'll be more specific as to why I would again say that those two companies are very critical in our story as well. Alibaba, like you said, did 2B and then monetize with marketing services in a much less mature 2B commerce market when they did it. But they brought things like marketing as a service, as a monetization tool for the first time in the world. So that is very exciting to us because it tells us that creating an ecosystem of services on top of a platform is a serious monetization strategy. It can even be the only monetization strategy if it comes to it.
It worked for them,
The other thing, and the thing that we learned from Amazon and from AWS and from the plethora of things that Amazon does is how to really be a multi-pronged company that does so many things, that creates so much dependence across the whole platform and ecosystem that you become a company that is incredibly hard to kill. How do you attack Amazon today? It's impossible. I mean, it's very difficult.
Unless you split it. Like U.S. government could do, then no,
But it's like, what you do with AWS and the kind of dependence it creates, or what you do with different aspects of different retail businesses that they own, both offline now and online. It's incredible to think that big and as a platform and think of, the core commerce business as serving only one part of the mission and having other businesses create dependence across customers and businesses. So it's an incredible learning experience for us to see how Amazon and Alibaba have both evolved over time, thought about financial services, thought about software as a service over time, and how that has actually served their core purpose. And we love to look at that and learn from it.
So how is Zelingo organized today?
There's obviously the core commerce business, which connects businesses, the fabric guy, the yarn guy, the factories and the brands, and allows them to trade with one another. Then there are the services, which uses the data and the invoices from the transaction business to use that to deploy financial services, marketing services, packaging services. We do 36 of those.
36?
36 of those.
36,
so,
wow.
36. So you name it, like, you maybe you're a factory and, you don't have an e-catalog. We could do something like that also. But maybe you're a factory and you want, UOB to lend to you. So even that would be enabled with the data. And then, of course, there are higher value-add services like data analytics. For example, what should I source? How do I manage my inventory? What should I stock? So there's the entire services business, of which financial service is the one that requires a separate structure of its own, because it is both originating loans and advances for financial institutions as well as giving out credit on its own from Zilingo. So that's how the business is. Geographically, of course, there's Asia, and now there's the US, Zilingo Inc.
How standardized or productized are these 36 services you have?
They're pretty standardized across the board because they need to be deployed to thousands of businesses simultaneously. However, for a lot of our big customers, we recently started working with Disney across Disney live action, Marvel, Star Wars, etc. They're a wonderful brand, and they're very different from a typical merchant on Zilingo, who's much smaller. But for them, for example, we would do bespoke services and bespoke procurement, etc. So we do make exceptions for really large brands that we work with, but most of the services are quite standardized because, a guy that's making 100 units and maybe 100 units at a time, $100,000 in a whole year, is also capable of using Zilingo.
Yeah.
So we would not do bespoke for them, but it would be a very standardized
But
product.
you have merchants from so many different countries. Do you
Yes.
localize in
Yes.
for every single country?
Yes,
Of
so-
those 36 services?
Definitely. So all 36 services not available everywhere,
Sure.
but the language, currency, and the cross-border nature, the forex settlement, payments, logistics, etc., requires deep localization.
Yes.
And that is localized for every country. So, for example, if you talk about logistics, because we do everything through third-party APIs, we
Yes.
essentially let B2B services integrate on top of our B2B platform.
Right.
So let's say a product is moving from Thailand to Indonesia, likely 3 or 4 logistics companies are involved in that, and 2
Right.
payments companies are involved. But let's say something like one of our most coveted services for factories is ERP, like
Yeah.
resource planning and production planning. And there, what we do is we invite B2B SaaS companies that are otherwise too expensive for these businesses to use to build
Yeah.
apps on top of our B2B platform
Right.
and deploy ERP across our factories and
Yeah.
so on.
I mean, this is not possible 20 years ago when Alibaba.com started. There's no
Yeah.
open API.
Yeah.
There's no SaaS. There's no cloud.
Exactly.
You can't do other stuff. You are what Alibaba.com could have been, if they stay in the business and become more international and recruit people from different parts of the world, not just from China, to build it. But now you're doing it.
Yes, hopefully
Yeah.
we'll do a good job.
Fascinating. Anything you want to say about you being one of the youngest female entrepreneur from India?
This matters to me. It's important. I think representation is an important thing. When I always say this, that all my role models and mentors have been men, and I think that's great because men make wonderful allies. And what I hope we achieve in another generation is that just we have more representation, more people of color, more women in tech, and so on and so
Absolutely.
forth, so that more people can relate to the leaders and feel like they can do it too.
Yes.
And I think it's happening, but it's going to take some time and some doing.
Yeah. We make a conscious effort if we can, where we can, have more women guests on the show.
That's fantastic.
It just need to be done. So you have teams from so many different countries, you have merchants from different countries. How do you organize either team building activities or merchant sharing activities in order to get people to share best practices and learn from one another and build a more cohesive community?
I think within each, at the level of a country, there's a lot of strong sense of community, whether it's the team or the merchants, etc. And across country, we make sure that every quarter people share both war stories as well as success stories and stories of failure with one another, what they learned, what they could have done better, and seek help actively. I think we really try to encourage both failure as well as seeking help, because our industry is changing so fast. There are very few comparables that we have, really. So we have to really learn from our mistakes fast. So we encourage failure, and then we say, hey, share your failure with everybody else in all the other countries and teams. So they know that, and then they hopefully make their own mistakes and not repeat yours. And it's a very supportive community. We try to build that. I think we should do. I always feel like you can always do more of this.
Sure.
So we are trying to figure that out. We recently engaged in coaches and mentors for the top 100 leaders. We're 600 people in the company. So for the top 100
Wow.
across geographies,
a high percentage.
Yeah, we're investing in coaches because a lot of the young leaders who are breaking things are in their, late 20s, early 30s. Many of them are first or second time managers, but they are great. So I feel like it's my job to make sure they have they're best equipped to do their job. So we're doing a bunch of things like that to make all of this, facilitate all of this.
Do you have a coach yourself?
Yes.
Interesting.
With your coach, what were the most useful advice that you have received?
I think most of the times he helps me take a step back and detach from the situation. And what I've learned, I think it's both the most useful advice and the most insightful thing I've learned. When you're detached from the situation, you likely solve it better.
You're less emotional.
You're less emotional. And as a founder and as a young founder, you're always very involved and very, very emotional about the outcome, which also is a good thing because you care about it so much. But every now and then, taking that step back and having a professional help you take a step back and rationalize all of the things that are happening is actually immensely helpful. It prevents taking any radical decisions, acting out. I think a lot of founders are very stressed. We are all very stressed all the time. I think it helps to have somebody ground you and make mature decisions in all times. So I think it's very useful to have a coach.
Yeah.
You are 23, as you were saying.
27.
27 now. Okay, 23 when you started the company.
Right.
Do you have a favorite failure, so to speak?
Yes, I do. It's a bit of a long story, but I'll keep it brief. A few years ago, we realized that we should, because we're doing end-to-end supply chain, we should also have our own private labels. And we failed at it so hard, right? We learned all of the challenges that other brands go through because of it, like sourcing and this and that. And, you really can't solve problems that you can't feel. So we felt it, but we failed again and we failed again. And then we failed again. And then finally, we realized that me, my co-founder, my founding team, the DNA was super tech and it was not fashion. And we realized that was the mistake, that we were not thinking about fashion as much, and we needed to change the DNA of the team itself. So we went hardcore and got guys that understood tech packs and manufacturing and fashion and design and teach us that and just build that out completely. And then that sort of taught us a very important lesson. I think the takeaway from that is that if you see an opportunity and you fail at it, you shouldn't give up. You should think about why you're failing. Maybe you're not the right person to do it, but it's still an opportunity you want to chase. Then you should get the right people and
To help you.
To help you, exactly. Get help.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. So let's jump into the last part of the podcast,
Okay.
which is a round of quick fire questions.
Okay.
Just say the thing that comes to your mind first. First question
Yes.
is, what are the staples in your wardrobe?
Pair of jeans, ripped jeans, black t-shirt, and heels. I'm very short.
Do you spend a lot of time thinking about what you wear every day?
Maybe 10 minutes.
Oh, fairly quick. What's something that you read recently that you would recommend?
I'm reading Becoming by Michelle Obama, and it's
Becoming Michelle Obama.
yeah, it's super fascinating and fun.
How so?
So I thought that, like most books about your own life and experience, they tend to be a little, not boring, but slightly pedantic in the sense, oh, this happened, this is what I learned. But I'm just I haven't finished it, so I don't know how it ends, but we know her life story. But it's so interesting. It's not a boring story at all, right? I think her challenges, and I can really relate to it.
Wow.
I'm feeling it. I'm excited.
That's impressive.
What's a habit that you have had you think that have changed your life?
I think just persistence. If I believe in it, I go for it. I keep going for it. I'm very stubborn about it. And the other one is it's going to sound funny, but I have a very thick skin, right? Like as a young woman in tech.
It's very important.
It's very important. You can't
have a
be
thick skin.
affected by people dissing at you.
That's right.
So I think that that might have been the most important one.
Yes, absolutely agree. I sold Cutco knives. That's my first job. So I know how important that is.
Yeah.
And those two things go together. You have to have
Yeah,
the thick skin
yeah.
to go persistent. What do you do when you're stressed?
So I watch a lot of Netflix. So it sort of helps me. The bad thing is that it's significantly reduced reading time and sleeping time.
Sure.
Because I'm just doing that. But it really helps to take the edge off. And
What are your top 3 shows?
Black Mirror. For
Oh,
sure.
of course.
Although I haven't seen
Very
I haven't seen
good.
the last one. Narcos, of course. Fargo. I don't know if you saw Fargo.
Yeah.
It's so super, super scary.
Yeah.
And I really like Patriot Act.
Oh.
Hassan Minhaj. And not on Netflix, but I love John Oliver, Trevor Noah, that entire
of course.
bunch.
Yes. Completely can relate.
Really takes the edge off.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah,
Thank you
that
for
was
having
fun.
me.
Thank you.
It was great fun. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for listening to this episode of Evolving for the Next Billion. If you have any feedback for the show or want to suggest a guest, feel free to email us at nextbn@ggvc.com.
GGV Capital is a multi-stage venture capital firm based in Silicon Valley, Singapore, Shanghai, and Beijing. We have been partnering with leading technology entrepreneurs for the past 18 years, from seed to pre-IPO. With $6.2 billion in capital in our management across 13 funds, GGV invests in consumer new retail, social, digital and internet, enterprise, cloud, and frontier tech. GGV has invested in over 290 companies, with more than 45 valued at over $1 billion. Portfolio companies include Airbnb, Alibaba, ByteDance, Ctrip, DiDi Chuxing, HashiCorp, HelloBike, House, Keep, Slack, Square, Wish, Xiaohongshu, YY, and others. Find out more at ggvc.com.